Good evening, everybody. I'd like to call tonight's meeting of the Fayette County School Corporation Board of School Trustees to order. It's Tuesday, June 14th, 2022. We are at the Administration Building. Let's all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okie dokie. I think we're starting out with a presentation. Is anybody in?
I will make an introduction to the presentation tonight. We have Gibraltar Architects here to talk about what they're starting with the feasibility study throughout the district. And I will begin with introducing Jim Thompson, or am I introducing Dr. McCormick? Dr. Jennifer McCormick, who also works with Gibraltar Group. Many of you may recognize her as the former Secretary, State Superintendent of Public Instruction. I get all that done. So, Jennifer, the podium's yours, and you can tell me when you guys want to click through this, and we'll go through it. So.
It is not lost on me. I had one person clap. So I have lost it.
Oh, not with me, woman.
Okay, all right, we're right there. So first of all, I want to truly thank all of you for having us here. We are really excited and honored to be a partner with all of you. There's kind of a history a little bit. I've known Randy for a minute, right? A couple of decades.
Years, yeah.
So we go way back, and so that relationship was there. I know Jim also knows Superintendent Collins, and Superintendent Collins also knows Chris Kingery, our Chief Education Officer. So there's some past relationships that we think make this even more special. We like that partnership, and we know your dedication to your community, and we are just thrilled and honored to be a part of it. So I also, on a side note, the board member role, and I would say this regardless if I was representing Gibraltar or not, but just I'm going to take this opportunity, is a tough one. So I want to thank you for what you do for your community and for your kids and staying focused. And I know we are playing the part of facilities right now, but it's so much bigger than that. So thank you for what you do on a daily basis. You have amazing administrators. You've hired some really good ones here this evening as well. So kudos for a couple of those hires. But with that, I'm going to turn it over to Jim Thompson, but we are truly honored to be a part of your upcoming future.
Yes, thank you, Jennifer. It is truly wonderful to be here. It's so nice to see everyone. In an abundance of caution, I'm wearing a mask due to some COVID last week for some people. So I will smile and say thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
So Aaron Chedrow is a recent Ball State graduate. I said to someone last week, I feel like we hired the 1A and 1B graduates from Ball State University this year. So it's awesome. And Darren will be walking this journey with us as we're going through this. I think rather than overwhelm you with information that you feel like maybe you're drinking from a fire hose, maybe we'll just say a couple of things and go over some of the more immediate steps that are going to happen. The goal, when we're done with this process and journey with you, is to equip you as a school board and as an administrative leadership team to have information, data, assessments, options to meet needs, so that when you are making those very important decisions that are both financial and, more importantly, learning opportunity decisions for your students, that you feel in command of that, like you do with all your board decisions. You get your arms locked around it, you ask good questions, and if we don't have the answer when we're with you, we go get the answer. Between our secondary ed consultant, Rick Adcock, and our chief education officer, who comes from an elementary ed background, Dr. McCormick, and her wealth of information, and our team of architects and engineers. And let's not forget your own staff, who have an ability to get information for you. I think over the months, and it will be months, not days or weeks, I think you'll collect and see this information coming forward. And a study like this, because it's comprehensive in nature, it doesn't have an exact step-by-step, like we can tell you in September at this board meeting exactly what will happen. It's more comprehensive in nature. But we did, with the packet we put together, one thing at the request of Randy and Scott was to create an ability to look at information first related to what you call the hill, and your high school and your pool, so we can get some of that information more immediate, and that may be based on some goals you have before the end of the year. And then we'll keep going with the rest of the district information and move on from there. So Randy, if you don't mind, let's go to the first slide. And again, you have a packet of information that repeats some of this and also provides more information than I'll cover tonight. But I think one of the first things to do is think about, okay, we're going to begin this journey. What's going to look like when we're all done? You can sort of, in this visual, see the table of contents where all the different aspects of what will be covered with the study, from assessing buildings and bricks and mortar to the learning environments, which is how it becomes a school, which is what you're trying to teach and have the students have opportunities to do. We can go through some operational considerations, and then what typically happens is there'll be some needs that get identified, and we'll start to list those for you and get your input on priorities and needs, and then we create options. And then ultimately there's a financial stewardship involved that you will have and take seriously. And so we'll start to put preliminary estimates together, create budgets. At some point in that process, a financial team, people who advise you on bond finance and issuing bonds if you need to, they become informed and involved, and it, in the end, puts all the information out there for you as a school board to consider. So that's a general overview of the table of contents, and I think if I referenced you to your packet, that was towards the front of the packet. Yes, that was on page 1, so it's right after the cover. So next, if you go a couple more pages into the packet I handed out, you'll get to page 3, and I have this visual here. So one of the first things you're going to want us to do is help you know what you have. How many square feet do you have at your high school, for example? What's the condition of the roof at the elementary school A or B or name of the school? So we take inventory. And one of the things that we're told is the manner in which we provide the information is unique. If you're using educational terms, it'd be like scaffolding, building the information. So we build a base with what you have and show you information like this. And then we build from there like you would build a scaffold, the other components of the information. But one of the things, if you just took a glance visually, or even like kind of squinted your eyes at this visual, what might pop out are the black boxes. See some heads nodding. So those black boxes need to have more attention paid to them. Those are going to be conditions of your facilities that are either maybe worn out beyond their useful life, they could have been just deteriorated, like I said, over time, or there might be other aspects of the facility that are obsolete in nature in terms of how they're supposed to serve. An example of a black box that might be lurking, if I can still keep this, Randy gave me, so you have surprises in those black boxes too, right? And if you're like me, nobody really likes surprises, particularly as a school board, when you're trying, oh, didn't know that was going to happen to our building. So we'll pass this around, but Daryl and your maintenance team, Jimmy, they were able to have a segment of pipe. So this would be pipe, I think, that's hydronic in nature, so it pushes hot and cold water through your building systems to heat and cool the building. But it's galvanized, so you can kind of look and see how messy it is.
I've seen that before.
Too many times, probably. So, and the point is that what you're seeing is not at all unusual. And it may be alarming at first, but I don't want you to be alarmed. It's just typical of having buildings in a community that has served its patrons for so long. But we want to identify those. It doesn't mean, even when you look at that you need to rush in and immediately do something. But I think if we see it as a starting to become an operational concern, then we want to put it on the list and say, how are we going to address this? What are we going to do to replace it? So that's what this does. You can see the columns are by building, and the rows are the aspects summarized for, and these are not your buildings assessed, these are just example pages. Okay, so then the next slide goes a little deeper. So Daryl and your team would probably talk to you about, from time to time, particular projects you need to do related to a building or a portion of a building. I know, like, for example, you're going to put air conditioning in your starting bowl. So this starts to show you how we can look at major pieces of equipment, like the boiler that provides heat. How old is it? How many years would it normally last under decent care? So we call that like the life expectancy. A little bit, think about like a car. Oh, I can have that car last 10 years if I take good care of it. It's now 12 years old, so it's a little bit past its typical age that it would last. And that's what this page does. And we summarize that for each building very carefully for you so that you can have at your fingertips and your team, administrative team, can start to know where are the more important things and how we're going to address them. Some things, interesting enough, people think, well, just because it's 20 years old and 15 years is the typical life expectancy, if it's still doing well, I consider that a win. Why not keep it until you feel like it's actually, a roof, if it's watertight, keeping the water out, just because it's older doesn't mean you need to replace it. You need to keep an eye on it. So we kind of like to help school boards also see where those wins are and where you don't need to spend money needlessly. Because you're trying to push those dollars around to get maximum benefit for your occupants, most of which stand about this tall and have a lot of learning. So we want to try and get as many dollars into the classroom, but also keep a safe building around them. Is that helpful? Kind of makes sense? Kind of where we're trying to go.
Yeah.
And then these are the first couple of 3 months, as I said in the beginning. I don't want to take you through the whole journey, but I just wanted you to see the first couple of months. There's a lot of site investigation, site visits, and some summation of this information. I think I have a couple other illustrations to show you. Okay, so then we'll jump through a few months and we'll come back at the next board meeting and talk to you about how we'll collect information from your building leadership, from Superintendent Collins, your assistant superintendent, and we'll talk about like how will we collect that. But in the very end, what happens is buildings would have thoughts about how we can improve them, whether it be STEM or STEAM, or it might be something at the high school in performing arts. It could be co-curricular in nature. It could be early learning or different. It could be what you have now, only improved, or it could be something new that you want to insert into a building and find a way to organize a floor plan and building improvements to do so. So these are just an illustration that shows how you can diagram that and quantify it. And then we put numbers to it. And then you can start to decide. If I spend this much money, I get this. Or if I spend it over here, I can do this. And we, as I said, we're told we're unique because we tend to lead with learning first and then go to the facility and say, okay, now we know what we want to do educationally. Let's get the roof done or the boiler done and so forth. So this will happen months from now. But it's a very important final piece to your puzzle of what to do next. I think the next slide. So schedule, and if you went to the very last page of the packet that we provided you, page 15. And as I said when I started the presentation, this is like a framework for how we can proceed. But we've worked with districts all over the state for, I've been doing this now almost 30 years. Sometimes boards like to have work sessions because they want to talk about a particular aspect of the information we bring forward. So that happens. There's no rule that it has to be so regimented either. Sometimes you might want to spend a second board meeting talking even more about even what we're starting with, the existing conditions of the buildings, because it's new to you or there's an aspect of it you want to talk more about. So we are at your pleasure and at your needs to have more than just this outline of board meetings. But I'll end with saying we did make a commitment to think about aspects of the pool and certain other pieces of your facility inventory, just to know that it was important for you to have that information first as we keep going. So with that, I'll end and saying thank you. Thank you very much. Is there any questions as we get started? Or Superintendent Collins, or is there anything you want to add?
think it's more a reminder, as we look at keeping our debt level, we work with Baker and Tilly. They've been in and done some work with us on some bonds, and, we have a couple of opportunities here. First, we have some capacity for $3 million or so as some debt rolls off, and then after the middle school's paid off finally, we will have a much greater opportunity to address a lot of our needs in our aging buildings. So that's coming up in about 4 years. In 26 is when we will look at it. So just a reminder for the public and the board, our goal is to keep our debt costs flat for the community and not raise our tax rate if at all possible, and maintain buildings that are 40, 50, 60 years old. So it's a big challenge ahead, but I appreciate our partnership with you all.
Thank you.
I like the way they take the approach of learning first. That's unique.
That is unique.
So appreciate that.
And it gives us a blueprint of what, a needs assessment is just like anything else. You're going to get the squeakiest wheel first, and you make accommodations for that, but you can't leave the other things, and this helps. I think this will be a fantastic tool to help us prioritize. That galvanized pipe looks pretty gross, but if it's still working, it's still working. And
Yes.
yeah, so the fact that it sets some priorities for us and allows us to go in an orderly fashion, and we're going to have the information that we need. Okay, maybe we don't know that something's the squeaky wheel, and you do the inspections and the like. You really need to address this sooner rather than later, because it's not going to work well. So we can make better informed decisions as to what we need to go forward with and when we need to go forward with it. So this is fantastic.
Thank you. You're absolutely correct on all counts. And your timing, based on the wisdom of your administrative leadership team, is perfect, because you don't have to rush. You have time to discuss and sort and organize. So I would anticipate we'll come in for a landing, just like you said, at the right time.
Thank you very much for the presentation.
You're welcome.
You are more than welcome to spend a pleasant evening with us, or you are welcome to go ahead and head back to.
I think we'll quietly depart, because I think next time we come in July, there'll be a lot more to discuss. So we'll not overstay our welcome tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Throwing out a little thank you to Dr. McCormick for all her wonderful years, and teachers love you.
Well, it takes all of us, right?
It does.
It does, it takes all of us, so.
And I'm
Right
thrilled
back at
you're
you.
with these folks, so we got a
We got
great
good
team.
people. Yep.
Thank
Well,
you all.
We truly appreciate it.
Thank
yeah.
you. Appreciate it.
for the
Thank you all.
guidance. Thanks, everybody.
Bye, everyone. Have a nice day.
Okay. Moving forward, I'd like to seek a motion to approve the agenda as submitted and amended.
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Chris. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Thank you, Dennis. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by raising their hand. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Public comments on agenda items? Seeing none, we'll move on to the consent agenda, which includes the approval of minutes from executive meeting 5/10/22 and regular business meeting 5/10/22, the personnel report, retirements, resignations, leaves of absence, etc., the approval of May 2022 claims 62063 to 62350, and appointments to the Fayette County Public Library Board. So, hearing the consent agenda, I'd like to ask a motion to approve.
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Lori. Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Ann. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by raising your hand. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Move on to action items. Personnel report, Mr. Harris.
Okay, I'm going to read through the personnel report, and hopefully upon approval, then I've got a couple of introductions to make. But on the personnel report, I am recommending for employment Mallory Cameron as the Director of Head Start Early Childhood Education at Little Park Preschool. Recommending Michael Shunnison as the Principal for Connersville High School, both of those beginning July the 1st. Then under Certified Staff, recommending Cassie Betts as Art Teacher at Eastview and the Middle School. Kelsey Johnson as Elementary Teacher at Fayette Central. Deborah Kirkman, Science Teacher at the Middle School. Kayla Noah as Head Start Teacher at Little Spartan. Marcy Stevenson, elementary teacher at Grandview. Catherine Swiniger as English teacher at the middle school. Brittany Tuttle as Head Start teacher at Little Spartan. Under classified staff, we're recommending Chris Bell as the girls golf coach at the high school. Haley Chappell as life skills assistant at Eastview. Christina Neely as Title I assistant at Frazee. Brittany Swango as Head Start floating educational assistant at Little Spartan. And Austin Worthington as summer tech support for the high school. Also, you have summer school recommendations for 2022 as attachment A, and recommendation for approval of administrative contract expirations are part of addendum B. So I'm making no recommendations to the board this evening.
Randy, can I ask a quick question?
Yes.
And I probably should have picked this out earlier and just didn't. The art teacher at Eastview and CMS, can you explain the split there?
It's one of those that all of the special teachers, the art, music, and PE among the elementaries, and how we split them, and we have a need for a half-time art teacher at Eastview, and we have a need for a half-time additional art. I mean, we have a full-time art teacher at the middle school, but we have need for also a half-time art teacher there, so it's split between those two buildings.
So is it the art teachers at the middle school? I mean, we had 2 full-time, right? Am I
Yes.
correct? And now we're doing 1.5?
Yes.
Right. But part of that is because we're adding some additional electives at the middle school. We're adding, I think, Scott put it in the Friday letter, Spanish,
Yeah, right.
Business and
some
then
digital citizenship for business, as well as ag class.
Yeah. right.
So that gives us a little bit more flexibility by cutting that down, because if they're 8th grade courses, so you kind of have to, if you add one, you've got to add a complementary course.
Okay.
So that's why there's a half-time position at CMS, and currently our art teachers now split Eastview. So
Oh, okay.
this allows one teacher to be at Eastview, so it's a win-win for us. So that's why we chose to do it that way.
Sounds good.
It's a great
So-
question,
And
thank
while
you.
one part is things like, well, why are we cutting back on art? We're really providing more opportunities
Right.
and more experiences at
Right.
the middle school.
Right.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you for clarifying.
Curriculum changes are good.
Okay, so I'd like to go ahead and seek a motion to approve the personnel report.
Give that motion.
Thank you, Jeremy. Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Chris. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by raising your hand. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Okay, now I'd like to make a couple of introductions, and I will invite Mallory to come forward first as I make the introduction. But beginning this, I want to thank the committee members that assisted in the interview process for Little Spartan Preschool. They included Ann Kirshner, board member, Kim Casaro, assistant superintendent, Kelly Flum, administrator, Kim Duffy, classified staff, Kelly Winta, teacher, and Amanda Cranfield, teacher. They gave of their time and spent for the first round of interviews, and I want to thank all of them. Now it's my pleasure to introduce Mallory Cameron to the school board as the Director of Head Start Early Childhood Education at Little Spartan Preschool. Mallory is a resident of Fayette County and a graduate of Connersville High School. After graduation, she attended Miami University, where she earned her bachelor's degree in early childhood education and special education. She began teaching at Grandview Elementary in 2012. She transferred to Eastview, where she stayed until 2019. During that time, she obtained her master's degree from Ball State University in educational administration and supervision, as well as gifted and talented. She left Fayette County to take the position as principal at Star Elementary in Richmond. And while in Richmond, she also served as the district lead on the preschool Pass to Quality Level 3 and preschool On My Way grant for the district. It was obvious from the interviews and from the references we checked, Mallory just has a real passion for preschool education. So my pleasure to introduce her, and welcome back to Fayette County Schools.
Thank you. I appreciate this opportunity. As Mr. Harris had shared, I started my career in Fayette County, and I'm looking forward to being back and serving our community.
We're excited to have you, Mallory.
Thank you.
Welcome back.
Yeah, welcome back.
Next one to the podium. And before welcoming the high school principal, I also want to thank the selection committee for the high school principal position. It included Leslie Jacobs, board member, Kim Casaro, Assistant Superintendent, Dr. Brian Todd, Administrator, Scott Gray, Classified Staff, Kim Geesting, Media Specialist, welcome this evening, Amanda Sleet, Teacher, Jamie Becker, Guidance, welcome, and Jamie Schroeder, Teacher. Or Jenny, what'd I say?
Jamie.
I'm looking at Jennifer.
Too many Jays.
Yeah.
Too many Jays.
Yep, too many J's. But it's my pleasure to introduce Michael Shenison as the new principal of Connersville High School. Mike grew up in Michigan. He came to Indiana and attended Butler University, where he received his bachelor's degree, including secondary education with honors. He also played a couple of years of soccer and was a manager for the basketball team for a couple of years. He furthered his education at Ball State University, where he received his master's and ed specialist degree in educational administration and supervision. He originally was a math teacher. He started his administrative career as an assistant elementary principal in the Anderson Community Schools, moved to director of alternative schools there. Then he moved to the Muncie Community Schools, where he held positions as assistant principal and athletic director at the Wilson Middle School, program supervisor at the Youth Opportunity Center, assistant director at the Muncie Area Career Center, and then actually spent most of his time as the assistant principal at Muncie Central High School. And now he is actually coming to us after spending time at the Richmond schools, where he was the director of secondary education since 2015. So, welcome, Mike.
That's a lot, that's a long resume there.
I'm worn out.
Busy, yeah, I'm worn out listening to that, so. In all seriousness, thank you very much for this opportunity. I'm just honored to have an opportunity to work with the families, the kids, the teachers, the whole entire community, and to build a better Connersville. And so, can't wait to get started. I think I've already started. It sounds like in some conversations I've had today and toured. Just a pleasure and an honor to work with you, and I can't wait to get started. So I don't know if you have any questions for me, but thanks again for the opportunity.
Good thing Richmond had red. I see you were in a red tie. Good choice.
Red and white, let's fight.
Good answer.
That's good.
She's on the side of Sparta now, isn't she?
That's right, that's right.
Thanks, Mike.
Thanks, Mike.
Alrighty.
Put that in the notes.
Now we're gonna move on to request to purchase technology hardware. Mr. Harris.
Okay, couple more things for me this evening. First, I have a request from Terry Miller, supporting to approve the purchase of servers and associated storage for a total amount of $224,764.56 from Bell Technologies. We're getting ready to put in all new servers and a whole lot of upgrades to the network and those kind of things here throughout the district. So I would recommend board approval for this purchase for the technology department. If you have any questions, the technology, Terry's in the back of the room. He can get into details more than me on these, but.
The only question I have, and this really doesn't have to do with this, but it's been a question that's kind of in the back of my mind for like 2 years. Do we have good internet in the back end of the Career Center where their auditorium is? Wasn't that kind of a dead zone for a while? I have some vague memory of that.
We have been through and replaced all the Wi-Fi's through all facilities, but, budgetary concerns being Career Center runs its own operations, so they make those determinations and we fulfill that request. So, if it's still a problem.
Oh, no, I don't know that it's a problem.
I think it's better now.
Yeah,
We replaced.
yeah, I think we held some event there or something, and it was, and I just have, I kept thinking about it and saying, surely we fixed that, but. Thanks, Terry.
We have.
Yeah, okay. All right, I'd like to seek a motion to approve the request to purchase technology hardware.
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Lori. Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
I saw Dennis's hand. Well, I heard your voice. I'll take Dennis. Visualize. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by raising your hand. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Okay, investment in school corporation funds, Mr. Harris.
Okay, this is an annual process that we're required to go through by law, but attached With this, you will find a resolution allowing banks outside of Fayette County to submit quotes on public funds, certificates of deposit. This allows for the highest possible rate of return on our certificate of deposit investments. And like I said, the statute requires annual approval of this. Just as a little sidelight, we actually, in the last day, in the process of rolling over a CD, the interest rate on our CDs have dramatically increased. I mean, they've went from 0.4% to we are just entering into a CD at about 3.1%. So.
Well, the Fed raised the.
Well, because a whole lot of economic factors go into it, but that's just a little side note, but I do need approval of this to continue on, and you'll see me back a year from now.
All right, I'd like to seek a motion to approve the investment of school corporation funds. Thank you, Chris. Do I hear a second? Thank you, Jeremy. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by raising your hand. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Okay, I think we've got Kelly's going to stand at the podium for a little while.
For a little while.
Just a little
I
while.
think this is the most I've been on action items.
Really?
As many things in a row, right? So thank you for your patience, and I promise I have the numbers right. I am seeking your approval first for a Zono double door machine sanitizing unit. Head Start performance standards require us to sanitize toys weekly, and that is a lot of manpower with as many kids as we serve. So there is a machine that can do that work for us. There's some research behind it. It's not the newest, it's the only thing like it on the market, but it does sanitize within about 35 minutes and can kill also lice and bed bugs. So we are requesting your approval for this machine at the cost of $24,800 using Head Start funding.
All right, I'd like to seek a motion on approval of the Head Start sanitizing unit.
I so moved.
Thank you. Ann, do I hear a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Lori. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by raising your hand. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Next up.
Next, I am seeking your approval on the purchase of a court playground surface. It's called PermaPlay in the amount of $27,884, and playground turf from the company Playgrounds, etc. in the amount of $22,555.50. Use 50 cents using Head Start, but lots of fives in that.
Okay, I would like to seek a motion to approve the Head Start Playground PermaPlay and Playground Turf.
I so moved.
Thank you, Ann. Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Jeremy. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by raising your hand. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Next up.
Next is the purchase of a door on the south side of the building where our Head Start children enter from buses in the amount of $13,554.12. The store has been a little temperamental over the year. Maintenance has been amazing about coming to check and fix. It's time to replace, so seeking your approval for that for our safety measures.
Great. I would like to seek a motion for that approval for the Head Start door replacement. Thank you, Dennis. Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Ann. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by raising your hand. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
And then next is, I'm seeking your approval. Our bylaws have been amended. We are opening the additional 7th classroom next year, which we approved in March. And our bylaws needed to reflect equal representation on policy council by opening that 7th room. So the language changed just in one small section about the representation. So each classroom is represented equally for policy council.
Okay. I'd like to seek a motion to approve the Head Start Policy Council bylaws, policies, and procedures.
I so moved.
Thank you, Ann. Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Jeremy. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by raising your hand. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Next is the parent volunteer complaint form, seeking your approval for the updated parent volunteer complaint form. In the past, when Head Start rooms were in all of the elementary buildings, the building principal was the go-to. Since we're all under the same place, we are seeking your approval for the new language to have that procedure start with the building director and then move on to Mrs. Casaro. We haven't had to use this since I've been here, so that's why we're just now updating it.
Okay. Yes, I'd like to seek that motion to approve the Head Start Parent Volunteer Complaint Form.
I'll make that motion.
Compliant form.
No, it's
Complaint.
Oh,
It's right on the
Okay.
website. Sorry.
complaint form. Okay, Lori said, got a motion from Lori. Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Ann. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by raising your hand. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Next up.
And finally, our priority guidelines, and as you know, we updated these in April or in March, and we approved those then, but since then, Head Start put out some new guidance that allows families with SNAP benefits to be automatically eligible for Head Start. So we have updated our priority guidelines to reflect that. So seeking your approval to approve our priority guidelines for Head Start.
Okay, I'd like to seek that motion to approve the Head Start priority guidelines.
Give that motion.
Thank you, Jeremy. Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. I do have, under discussion, I have a question. So I guess I would have figured it was a no-brainer. It's not. So of your SNAP recipients, would you say most of your Head Start parents are SNAP recipients?
Most are, yes.
Okay.
In the past, it allowed as a point on the priority guidelines, but now it's an automatic eligibility.
Okay.
So like foster care is an automatic eligibility, now
Okay.
SNAP is an automatic eligibility.
Interesting.
We use the priority points when we have a waiting list, and that's how we determine who gets the next available spot. But anybody coming in right now who is enrolling, if they receive those SNAP benefits, it's an automatic qualifier.
Okay, good to know. Any other discussion?
Do we have a waiting list currently?
We do not have a waiting list for Head Start currently. The Head Start enrollment process is lengthy. Incomes have to be verified, and it takes sometimes weeks to get those done. So Julie, my family service coordinator, works year-round and does those eligibilities throughout the summer, and she has about 50 pending right now, and that's just waiting on work ones to come in. So we're kind of on the waiting game with the state on a lot of those things.
Did you have a waiting list last year?
We did not have a waiting list for Head Start last year. A few years ago, when we did our enrollment reduction to open the full-day rooms, we decreased the amount of Head Start children we serve, but we're picking those children up within the title and the developmental program. So I anticipate a very large waiting list for title and developmental this year.
Okay, so that's what my
That's
next
where-
question
Yes.
was.
So Head Start will be fully enrolled. That's one of our stipulations for the grant. Those flexibilities are still in place to not have to be fully enrolled, but our goal is to serve our 134 that we're funded for.
Okay, good to know. Okay, any other discussion? All those in favor signify by raising your hand. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your time, and thank you for your support over the years in my position.
Thank you.
I'm excited for Mallory to come on board, and I know she's going to do great things at Little Spartans Preschool.
Thank you for all your hard work, Kelly. We so appreciate you.
Thank you.
Kelly, one question. How many kiddos are you sending on to kindergarten this year?
180.
Wow.
Yes.
Wow.
Awesome.
Yes.
Thank you.
Exciting.
Okay, approval of textbook rental fees for 2022-23. Ms. Corsaro.
Okay, in your packet, I provided you with the fees that we are going to ask for your approval tonight for elementary. Because we have decided at the elementary level to do a continued use with our math textbooks and with some of the ESSER support, we're going to again remain the same as we have for the last 2 years. So our elementary textbook fees will remain the same again this year. Obviously, secondary is a little different, depends on the courses they take, if they take dual credit courses. So CMS and CHS, you will see that they give you an example of what their actual fees are and what an average rate will be, but it will depend upon what courses those individual students take. The same thing with WCC. So I'm asking for your approval tonight for textbook rental fees.
Okay, I'd like to seek a motion to approve the textbook rental fees.
Give that motion.
Thank you, Jeremy. Do I hear a second? Thank you, Chris. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by raising your hand. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kim. Approval of the resolution 2022-01, transporting students who live outside Fayette County. Mr. Collins.
Thank you, Ms. Jacobs and Board. We have seen a pretty dramatic increase in the number of kids that we are being asked to transport, most generally when they're placed through foster care inside or outside of our county. So Daryl and his team, they do a great job with servicing that. But we are transporting kids pretty far distances to keep them. So if the case manager determines that this child's best interest is to remain at Franklin County Schools, but lives on Grand Avenue here, we are required to transport that student, and we've had a good partnership with our area schools to meet find a halfway point. So that's one factor, is just having some clarified language there. The other is, we typically provide bus service for our county, for our boundaries of our district. However, without a county enrollment, we have some interest where there may be some possibilities where we could run a bus a mile or so into a neighboring district for a student who's attending here. And if Darrell can do that without incurring significant cost or increased time for our kids riding, this gives us that authority to do that. And we know a few families that may be interested in taking advantage of that in very close proximity to us. So this just gives us that authorization to take care of those pieces when we have travel outside of the county.
Did we have something like this before, or was it?
No, we have policy language, but
Yeah.
Michelle suggested we draft a resolution that will go until the board decides to change it.
So does the policy reflect, is that in the same vein as, is the policy more vague? Or?
It's more vague. This just
Okay.
gives us that piece where we have that option, and you're giving us the authority. If Darrell says, I have a family 0.6 of a mile across the county line, and we can swing the bus by without increasing significant time, it gives him some flexibility, and I think that's a good move for us.
Leslie, we did talk about that with Glenwood and Milton and.
Yeah, we did,
Yeah,
about
primarily
trying to
north
attract
of
some
us,
students
yeah.
too, but I was just trying to clarify why we're doing a resolution as opposed to just having the policy in place.
That was her suggestion,
Okay.
just to cover that. So.
Okay.
Well, because other school districts may not like the idea that we are infringing upon their territories.
Scott, will the cost of fuel impact anything now with the transportation?
They're working on that. Yvonne Dunkel is working as a routing specialist now, but we've eliminated 10 routes over the last now 6 years. So Darrell's looking at other options where we may be able to find some other. We're always looking for those ways to save costs, because fuel is a huge cost. And diesel fuel, if you look at the price of it, even though we're exempt from the taxes, it's still a huge cost when you figure a bus gets how many miles per gallon in a full-size bus.
Probably 6 or 8.
Yeah. So yeah, that's it. And Darrell's gonna share something at the end about some busing things too, but that's a good question, yeah. Our costs are going up, not only utilities. We met with Darrell today about looking at how can we save more on our utility costs this summer, he's working with his team, and then also the fuel costs. It's hard to put a number on how much it's going to cost us more, but definitely try to find more efficiencies than we already have.
Of
course, we are also looking at bulk stops instead of door to, where we pick up at this corner distance. Like if you're in the walking distance at a school, you can kind of this middle school, high school, walk there and take them to school. So we have cut some costs there, so we're looking at different options.
Now, you mentioned if a student was in our district but needed to go to, say, Franklin County, would we have to take them ourselves, our district?
To meet halfway at least.
We transport kids now to a school in Indiana, the blind and deaf school. We transport kids all the way to Indianapolis back and forth.
Now, is that something we're responsible for the financial cost, or do we get reimbursed, or?
Nope.
No, they live
We
in
have
our
one like
district, they're
in
ours.
Richmond, Jeremy, that we meet, Richmond at the Woodruff's Market.
Yep.
And we pick up and drop off right there. We were doing that for a while, but if they can't supply something, then we charge them for the other half of the cost. So they pay half each way.
Okay.
That's court ordered, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, we don't have options.
It's determined it's in the best interest of the
Of the
child,
child, yeah.
even if it's an hour or longer
2 hour
drive.
drive.
But the children who are serviced through the blind, that's through their IEP, and that's a school that specializes in that. And so we have that we have the same driver typically that runs that shuttle, but people don't always realize how much our transportation department does to support our students, so a lot of work goes in there.
Do we have many or anticipate many students from outside of the county that we would be doing this to, bringing them into it?
We don't know yet. I think if someone asked, we would.
Okay.
That, I would turn that over to Darrell to see if that's something we could feasibly do. We're not going to incur a a lot of extra cost or put a lot more time on it for our kids already on the route. That would not be our goal. You get up into some of the areas of the county where we're already on the county line road.
They just live on the other
Very
You pick up a kid on that county line road, but they live on the other side.
side, it could be in the county.
Yeah, I understand, that makes sense.
We have one now on Whitaker Road that's actually Wayne County, but I mean, we drive right by to get her next to. So,
County lines are
This gives us-
strange and wonderful.
We have kids that live in Fayette County, but their school district is Wayne County, but they have like another
Yeah.
district telephone number, like when they had landlines, you know, it was a different landline number. It was just, I know somebody who had that situation, and I thought, none of that makes sense.
Well, if you lived up by Bentonville, that was a whole
I
nother
like that.
situation.
Leslie, what you're talking about is Pimville Road, there's one just like that.
Right, yeah, that's what I was talking about. All right, I'd like to seek a motion to approve the resolution 2022-01, transporting students who live outside of Fayette County.
I'll do that motion.
Thank you, Jeremy. A second. Thank you, Dennis. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by raising your hand. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. All right, now we'll move on to the return to school plan, Ms. Broussard.
Okay, the return to school plan that we are required to put on our website looks like this. I'm required to discuss it with you one more time because we are going to change the top line to say that we are doing in-person learning. Even though we've been doing that, we now are required to discuss it with our stakeholders in June, December, and hopefully this will be the last time I'll have to discuss it, but I wanted to let you know that we are posting it on our webpage. It will now say that FCSC will return to in-person learning for the 2022-2023 school year. And then it does have a disclaimer that if for some reason we receive a high number of positive cases in the district, that we will follow the matrix that you guys approved last year. So I just need to let you know that this is being updated. It has been discussed and will be on our webpage starting tomorrow.
We have 2 more times, I believe, after this.
Yeah, and then I think it's part of the ESSER money, you know, so we have to be in compliance, so, but we did have to change the language to say we're in person, even though we've been in person.
Okay.
Okay.
Next up.
The next one, I'm gonna have Mr. Harris pass this out. This is gonna be an ongoing discussion. It's not anything that I can possibly explain to you in a short amount of time. But, you know, I've tried over the last couple of years to take all of our district initiatives and kind of continue to put them out in front of you so that you understand where we've been, where we're going, and as we reflect, sometimes, you know, SLC, we built that in the air, we had to make lots of changes in flight. We're finding as our student needs continue to change, we have to make those changes in flight. So, you know, when Scott and I came aboard, we were big on Marzano's framework, the first 3 levels of safe collaborative culture, effective teachers in every classroom, and the guaranteed and viable curriculum. So we've been working on all 3 of those levels, but what I'm really going to talk to you tonight about is really that first level. And so I have provided for you our discipline data for elementary, middle school, and high school from 2018 to this year. And I think as you look at the data, you will see that the trends of the amount of discipline that we're excluding kids from the classroom is increasing drastically. I didn't include elementary in school suspension because some of our elementaries have what we call reset rooms, but not all of them do. But our middle school and high school actually have established rooms where people are doing in-school suspension in that room all day. So they are completely removed from instruction in those buildings. So it's easier to track their data than it is some of our elementaries. Some of our county elementaries don't even have the staffing to do the reset rooms. And that's like, could be 5 minutes, it could be 10 minutes. So that's why you don't see anything on the elementary. You can see that out-of-school suspensions, you know, over the years, CHS has kind of bounced around. Those are your out-of-school suspensions. That means they're completely removed from the school, either for 1 day, 3 day, or 5 days. On the second page, you'll see 10-day suspensions pending expulsions. By law, you are not allowed to suspend a student for more than 10 consecutive days. without some kind of follow-up. And usually what happens is they will do a 10-day suspension. If they're a special ed student, then there is a manifestation hearing that's required to determine whether or not the behavior is actually an outcome of their identified eligibility in SPED. If it's not, then it goes to the expulsion examiner, which is me. And then we have a hearing to determine whether or not we bring the student back to the school or go forward with the expulsion. Majority of times, we do what we call PCEA, which means we bring the student back on some kind of probationary contract. But you can see we've had a significant increase in the last 4 years with our expulsions. This year we had a lot of kids that were going for expulsions. And when you start looking at the amount of time we're putting kids in school suspension, out of school suspension, and then 10-day pending expulsion, you start to see some patterns and some trends. Then we add the COVID-19 in on there, and you add all those times that we're quarantining students. So I guess what I'm trying to show you in this data is we all are familiar with our students have large achievement gaps. This between the excluding them from the instructional process and then COVID-19, those both have made it very difficult for our teachers to close those instructional gaps. So what we ask our counseling team, we have counselors and social workers at all of our buildings, we've asked them to keep some data to kind of help us get an understanding of what our kids' needs are. We put a neuroeducator in place a couple of years ago. It's just Ashley Steffi. She has been on maternity leave, and then she's on a short, she had twins, so she's only working a couple days a week, but her main focus was just providing education on what does a student in trauma, what kinds of things will you see, how do you identify a student in trauma. We talked about the ACEs, we talked about kids in poverty and how they're different from other kids. So if you look at the next couple of pages, the first one is the counselor referrals for the district for October. So for example, you can see that our counseling team saw 48 kindergartners, they saw 39 seniors. Then the next column is the reason for meeting, and it might be a check-in or follow-up, it could be a new student move-in, parent request, so forth. But I think the most significant information that we received from this is the next topic, which is the topic of the meeting. So for October, you can see that we saw 29 students for anxiety, we saw 23 students for anger, 95 students for behavioral issues, and that was just in October when we just started school. Some of that could be some of the pandemic, but again, it's good data for us to look at as we go into next year. We can kind of track this. We track it as of each month, but I only gave you some snapshots because it would have been a very large packet. If you go to the next month, it's February, and you can look again at those same reasons for meeting, and you can see that the numbers are drastically higher. We went from anxiety being 29 to anxiety being 60. Behavioral issues went from 95 to 179. And that is just in February. We don't even have April, March, May, all those, the end of the year where behaviors have a tendency to increase anyway. So when you look at all of this data, you have to start making some conclusions about, okay, we have all these initiatives, this is what the data is telling us, what conclusions can we make? So just some conclusions that my admin team and my leadership team we've talked about is, first of all, we're still operating on the no tolerance, which was introduced in the late 90s, early 2000s, where, it didn't matter if the kid did something, they were automatically out of school. That kind of took a little bit of change when SEL came in place. But what's happened is we still, as Dr. Adams says, we still use sticks and carrots, which means that we either try to incentivize something for them to behave, and then when they don't, it's like we go to the punitive, the out-of-school suspensions and school suspensions. And so we're continuing to push alarming amounts of kids either out of school for 1, 3, 5, 10 semesters, or they get into that trend of being suspended so much that they just drop out to homeschool or they drop out altogether. So that was one conclusion we made. From the counselors' data, it's very obvious that our students continue to struggle with mental health and behaviors. And again, I said, now that we have COVID-19 on top of those, closing that achievement gap is becoming more and more difficult for our teachers and our staff. And I think it's important that we recognize that. And then finally, our current approach to dealing with ongoing mental health issues and behavior is not decreasing the number of referrals or counseling needs. So when we put the neuroeducator in place and we put MTSS and SEL in place, we had a tier 1 approach to all of this. I would like to say it was presented beautifully and there were no potholes in the road, but COVID-19 quarantines are a lot of things that unfortunately caused that rollout to be a little rocky. But we still should have seen some decreases in some of our numbers. So what we have to do is kind of think about, okay, the needs are not going down. Our mental health needs of not only our students, but our adults and our parents are increasing. Our discipline rates are going up, and our achievement rates are going down. So we've got to kind of figure out where do we go from here based on what resources we have. So if you look at the next page, the things we put in place over the 5 years, we started with the commitment to the Marzano's levels. We hired a neuroeducator to start teaching the staff about the effects of trauma. We opened a Little Spartan Preschool with 10 classes. We now have 13 classes going into this fall. We arranged it so that our counselors and social workers were in all of our elementary buildings and middle school and high school daily. There was a time when I was an elementary administrator, I only had a counselor 2.5 days, which made it very difficult to deal with some of those issues on the days they weren't there. So we've changed that. We created an MTSS leadership team, which is talking about the tiered interventions. SLC was developed to help those students that had some anxiety and some mental health issues that the traditional brick and mortar classroom was not advantageous to them. So we created that. We started integrated school-based counseling. If you remember 2 years ago, we signed up with Meridian. They have behavior clinicians in our buildings. Last year, Centerstone also decided to integrate with the schools and provide that counseling. Because we recognize that there's still a need for counseling, but there's so much need that there's no way we could possibly find enough people to put in support for the counseling needs of our individual kids. We've chosen to participate with Bowen Counseling, and they offer a student assistant plan, and it's part of a consortium grant that we received through Essential Services with Katie Lash, and so part of that grant pays for some additional support from this company, and Trish and I are meeting with them Thursday to go over what opportunities that they will have available. They will send people here. There will be obviously the virtual option, but it is an opportunity that we wouldn't have if we weren't part of the consortium grant with Essential. So we're going to take full advantage of that because, as you know, Meridian and Centerstone, their caseloads are so full. They weren't accepting new cases at the end of last year. I'm not sure where they stand. Staffing obviously was a huge concern for them. So I think it's important to recognize that we are not decreasing our mental health support. We're changing our approach. We can't possibly just every time an issue with a student comes up, work on that one individual student. We've got to start looking at it from a district perspective and helping our teachers deal with some of these behaviors that they're incurring in their classrooms. We've done a great job, I feel like, the last 2 years explaining what these kids look like, why they have the issues. Teachers now want those applicable strategies of, okay, I know this kid's in poverty. Okay, I know this kid's had trauma. Well, what am I supposed to do with the kid for the 25 to 45 minutes that I have him in my classroom? So they're really asking us for those strategies. So moving forward, as you know, ESSER funds are only a short period of time. And so we've got to be very careful that as we use these funds, we're building systematic systems that we can use even when the money's gone. Because if we put all of that money into individual counseling and the money's gone, then what are we gonna tell the teachers in 2 years? Well, we're sorry, we can't keep these positions because the money's not there. So we've got to start looking at a system that we can put in place to build capacity with our teachers to help them, as we say, manage behaviors. Many people want to fix them. It's not gonna happen, but we can manage those behaviors. So if you look at what our objectives and my admin team and my MTSS leadership team, is we'd like to start incorporating more restorative practices into our K-12. This is not saying that there will be no suspensions and there is no discipline. This is saying that we look at other alternatives as well as those alternatives. Right now, we're really just using the sticks and carrots. Well, if you do this, I'll give you this, or okay, you didn't go to fourth period, so you're truant, so we're gonna suspend you. So I don't want the perception to be that we're getting rid of discipline, because that is not it. But what this restorative practices is, if you look at it, it's a set of skills for building community and responding to challenging behaviors in schools. So what I would like to move forward with is the middle school was actually involved with a grant with the state on restorative practices, and they were able to participate in some professional development, and they have one teacher who joined our staff last year from Richmond. She was actually part of the Dennis Middle School incident, and she's very passionate about trauma-informed care, and she has been trained by Dr. Lori Desatals at Butler, and she took on this role of modeling to teachers of, okay, if this student is doing this, these are some strategies that you can do. How do I keep the students engaged so that they aren't causing misbehaviors? And she did a really nice job, and she had a lot of credibility, and it kind of dawned on us that social workers and counselors are great, and they have their purpose of helping those students, but teachers need other teachers that are strong classroom managers and that have an understanding of these behaviors, help them with the daily classroom things. A counselor and a social worker can remove that student, but it's important that we at some point reintegrate that student back into the classroom. And when you just use punitive type discipline, there's no reintegration, not even for the teacher. So if a student throws a desk at a teacher or a chair and they're suspended 3 days, and after the 3 days they go right back into the classroom, and there's no kind of reintegration or communication or kind of buffering for the teacher or the student. So these restorative practices, you start with your tier 1, which is all students, all teachers, and you build some relationship type, they call them restorative circles. We kind of do that with our morning check-ins, where our kids come in and they do, how are you feeling, blah, are you feeling bad? If so, what are the things that make you feel that way? And we've done that across the board, but this would be more about educating teachers, modeling for teachers, and just really building their toolboxes up, because we continue to hear from our teachers, great, we love Dr. Lori, we love Dr. Adam, we love the neuroeducator, we love all the information, but now what do we do with this? How do we teach, and how do we manage these behaviors? And our counselors, as you can tell from their caseloads, don't have time to do both of those roles. So by implementing these restorative practices, we would provide more support for our teachers, and in turn building a system of, if this happens, you do this, and also kind of increasing the tools in their toolbox. So the last page is just really where the next steps. And again, I'm telling you this very quickly, this is a long process, but I'm just going to give you some brief highlights. Our first initial thing was to take Kelly from Little Spartan Preschool, and she's now going to be the Director of Alternative Learning. We recognize that SLC was a great move forward for us, but it's not the end-all be-all. We need to start getting these kids at a lot younger age, like elementary, because you can't target a junior that's already struggled all of those years and expect for us to be able to turn all of that around. So by hiring Kelly to be this director, she's going to start already. We have identified 20 families and students that are at risk at 8th grade of not going on to 9th grade. And she's gonna start going into those homes, setting up some resources for them, setting up some plans for these students. And then we would like to again do that at 6th grade, because we see that the hardest transition is 6th to 7th, 8th to 9th. So that's part of this framework, is building that relationship. Kelly already knows the majority of these families at being at preschool. And so by putting her at the top, we're really trying to bring the beginning and the end kind of closer together. The next step would be hiring a restorative facilitator at the elementary and the secondary level. It's very different in an elementary world and a secondary classroom. And we started some of this modeling with Kristen from middle school. She is the one that I was talking about earlier, and she did a lot of the modeling and helping teachers, coaching them on how to manage behaviors. Our goal would then be to have her do that half day and then work at SLC a half day teaching as well. And then ultimately, then we would have to figure out someone at the elementary level that would have that skill set that could go in and help identify. We'd probably start by identifying like our at-risk kids at each building, and then having that person go into those classrooms, working with the teacher and working with the families. Long story there. I don't know how I get when I get passionate about something, Jeremy. So this is really just an introduction to where we're going and how we're taking all of the initiatives that we kind of put in place. We just really need the glue to put them all together. And I think I'm a big data person. Like, you have to start with the data and see what the trends are, and then start peeling that onion one layer at a time. If it works, great. We've used some ESSER funds to do some things that were working, but this is about building something much bigger and something that's sustainable way past the time that the ESSER dollars are gone.
Oh, I have a whole lot. It's hard to look at.
It's really hard to look at. The data is very hard to look at.
Very hard to look at.
It is. But it is what it is, and it's a starting.
I understand that, and I'm not, while I understand the pandemic had a lot to do with things, then I think we need to be looking at why did the pandemic have so much. I mean, I realize kids were out of school and then they come back, and I understand that. But, you know, when you separate out behavior issues are really the result of anxiety, depression, anger. I mean, it's emotions drive behavior.
Oh, yeah.
So, you know, and I was glad you put number of students, because I wasn't sure if it was number of referrals and how many of these were duplicate students. So I think that would be hard to identify that somebody has a behavior issue and there is an underlying depression. Most adolescents are not going to tell you they're depressed.
Right.
The other thing is, I noticed our 4th grade numbers are higher than any other elementary level. And I'm very curious, well, except actually in February 6th grade level, but what's going on in 4th grade that these kids are so stressed that we're having a lot of issues? And why in the world did we have 129 counseling referrals at kindergarten? I was going to ask Kelly, how many, you don't have a counselor, right?
We don't, but we have a mental health consultant, and we have our partnership with Centerstone, so.
And are you seeing the number of counseling concerns at the?
We are seeing the same behaviors that we're seeing in
Right.
kindergarten.
And the other thing I want to say to the public, this is not Fayette County specific. This is all across. I sent an article to Scott, well, it was actually some posting on Instagram just about the mental health struggles, that we've just catapulted into a whole other realm that is so disturbing to me as a social worker. I think the part that bothers me the most isn't where we're going, it's this punitive approach. That doesn't work. And the other thing I'd say is, you know, I liked what you said that, you know, one of Kelly's jobs that she's doing now or is planning on doing here is involving families.
Oh, yeah, they're key.
And if you have any conversation with anybody in schools, you know, where it starts is, oh, we can't get parents to participate in PTO, but we can't get families. So what are there models out there of family involvement, of ways to have families not feel intimidated to be in the building, not feel like they have to defend their kids, but rather to support the school. I'm just curious about that, because I feel like
Right.
we're not going to tackle any of this till we have families
Right,
that
and I think that's
get it.
one of the advantages of moving to restorative practices, because it is about building school climate. If kids enjoy being there, they're going to be more successful, and the parents are going to be more apt to want to come into the school if the kid wants to be there. If the kid comes home and says, no one cares about me at that school, as a parent, we automatically get on the defense, and that becomes our perception. So I think that's one thing that I really like about restorative practices, is because it's about building relationships. It's about collaborating with parents. It's about bringing parents into discipline before you decide what the consequence is, letting them be part of those conversations. So there are lots of parent projects out there for schools to do, but I really think it starts with our schools. If kids love their school, parents will love their school. And if you're trying to change their perception of a school, your staff has to love it first. I mean, they're your biggest cheerleaders.
Do we ever poll our students to find out, our students that are struggling and are having lots of counseling referrals, what would help them to feel less anxious, less angry, less are we doing that? And then the other question I have for you is, what is this Bowen thing? Can you explain it?
Okay, answer the first question.
Yeah.
We do talk to kids a lot, and that goes back to what we hear from kids mostly, is that the adults in the building don't care about me, or the teacher doesn't even want to be here.
Yeah.
Or, so again, that goes back to those relationships that children have with adults. At elementary, you have the same teacher all day long, so you get a closer relationship with that teacher and that parent. And then middle school, you start to rotate classes and have different teachers. And then high school, a lot of times we think when they're high schoolers that they're these adults and the parents just let them be the student. But, that's when they need us probably the most, because they are going through so many changes. So I think if we were to poll most kids, and I know Jamie can attest, most kids, those are their answers, that no one cares about me, or like when I get into an expulsion, well, that teacher just doesn't like me, and that's part about that reintegration. If you don't ever let the kid and the teacher have that moment to kind of say, hey, today's a fresh start, that was water under the bridge, we're going to start over. They go in defensive thinking, well, as soon as I walk back in here, I'm going to get in trouble again.
Sure.
And how do we?
Wait, can you answer about the
Yeah,
Bowen?
and the Bowen Center is a counseling service that they have like 40 counties currently. And what they do is they offer school-based integrated counseling. And what they will do is they will meet with us, like we're meeting with them Thursday. We talk about what our specific counseling needs are, and then they will develop a plan with us based on our needs. They'll have people that are available to come over and help talk with kids during the school day. And then they'll also have some additional online counseling sessions. I do believe, and it's geared more for the student that doesn't have the private insurance that will pay, or the Indiana Medicaid that will pay. So they're kind of trying to get that group of either they don't have insurance or their private insurance won't pay for them, and they charge like a quarter.
And, yeah, I'm not a huge fan of having outliers come in that don't know our kids, don't know our families.
Right.
Not a fan. Just gonna
I
say
think
that.
the only reason we're using that option is because Centerstone and Meridian both told us, was it March, Jamie, that they both told us they are no longer accepting any more clients. So at that point, when you tell a parent, they come to us and they say they need help, and we say, well, Meridian and Centerstone can't provide any help. I mean, we are somewhat of a resource desert here. We don't have a lot of options for parents. So it's just one more layer. It's definitely not going to be our first choice, but we have to be able to have something to give to them as a support.
Right, except that you also said more counseling isn't going to fix this.
Right, it's not. But for an individual family, when we have a sphere of influence, and our sphere of influence isn't going to be having a kid meet with a counselor and fixing that issue. But sometimes there is a place for counseling, and that needs to, if that parent and that child need that, we by all means don't want to not provide them with that. We're just saying that because we have so many kids who need it, we're not able to, with our current resources, access all of them. So how can we take instead of like the Band-Aid, like, okay, you have a problem, I'm gonna give you counseling, I'm gonna put a Band-Aid on it. How can we be more proactive and try to build some things in place to maybe eliminate some? We're not gonna fix it, but how do we manage it? And it all goes to that sphere of influence.
Kim,
Not a fan.
something that, and of course I taught forever, one of the things that some of my former students are now the parents of these children that are in peril, and we have some kids that have. School was not a user-friendly place for a lot of these parents. How the school was structured back in the 80s and in the 90s is very different than what we look at now. It wasn't a pleasant place for them. They didn't, I would be really interested to see, and you're a data person, the data of the chronic behavior problems that we're having with a certain group of kids and the families. What's the background on these families? Did they finish school? Did they get their GED? What was their attitude about school? What was their attitude about a lot of things? Because as a parent, whether you like it or not, you push that on to your kids.
Right.
And hopefully it's a positive thing, but when a kid goes home and says, man, my teacher hates me, and I don't want to go back to school. Well, there were no alternatives. We couldn't go to K-12 back then.
Sure.
And the parent would say, well, you know what? I didn't like school either, and I don't blame you. And so you have that framework. Is there something in there that we can actually get some information from some of these parents who had very negative experiences for whatever reason? School was not user-friendly. I can remember having to read the rules every first day of school, and it was ridiculous. It was like, okay, these are the Articles of War, guys. It was so punitive. If you do this, if you do this, if you do this, if you do this. And I think we're trying to come out of that, but that framework doesn't work with the kids that we have today, and I'm not sure that it worked well. But there will be some people say, well, we don't have discipline anymore. Yeah, we do, but we just have to do it differently because
You parent differently.
you parent differently. These kids have been brought up differently. So what worked for my generation or your generation is not going to work. And unless we're adaptable, we're going to lose. We lost too many parents when they were kids by not being able to adapt to their needs. If you look at the dropout rates, the real ones at Connersville High School, they did a thing back in 2000 or 2002 with the graduates. I think it was 2001 because it was the year my son graduated, that over 65% of the graduating seniors had at least one parent that did not graduate from high school. I would like to see those kinds of statistics now. How many of your parents, because if the parent, there's trust issues. If they didn't like it, why should you expect your kid to like it? Which makes the burden on the staff and everybody. We have to change the culture because our kids are too much of a resource and they have so many other things that other generations did not have to pull them out. And they have so many other options that aren't really good, viable options. A small thing that I'll just relate. They put in the new cafeteria at the middle school, and it's really cool. It's like a restaurant. The kids love it. And I was in there and I was talking to a bunch of the kids and I says, well, what's so cool about this? He says, well, their kids were talking to each other again. They weren't in these long institutional tables. Some of them, 6 little girls were squeezed into a thing for 4 kids. But they were not on their phones. They were talking to each other. They were communicating. The noise level has decreased exponentially. These kids want the connections. They want to be able to do this. And as the schools, we need to provide the venue for that. But we have to look at where they're coming from, and can we sit down and talk to these parents and say, hey, we recognize that maybe school for you was not the most pleasant thing. We can't fix that, but we want to do something better for your kids. And perhaps we would get a little bit more buy-in, because now it's us versus them. And it was us versus them 30 some odd years ago when I started, and that's not good, because we've got to come ahead of that. And I think what you're trying to do with restorative practices, ask the kid I'm not the enemy here. I used to tell my kids, they come in, they were, I'm not the enemy here, what's going on? What can we do to fix it? And you don't recognize the little things that you do as a classroom teacher. And I think teachers sometimes think they have to do big things, and you don't. Sometimes all you have to do is give them a pencil, or just give them some time, or say, hey, what's going on? We care about you, because they're like little sponges, and some of them are getting it at home and some of them aren't. But I think, is there any part of this program that can get the parents in and say, look, we really want to work with you as a family. What were your issues with school? What can we do? We can't fix it, but how can we help you adapt so your child won't feel the same when they get out? All I want to do is get out of school. I want to drop out. I hate this place. And we hear that way too much from the little ones and the big ones. So the data is disturbing, but not at all surprising.
I appreciate all your hard work. I want more information.
Okay, and like I said, I could talk about this for a really long time because I'm very passionate about all of this.
Yeah.
But like I said, it's more of an ongoing discussion, and it's to bring back, sometimes I ask for approval for initiatives and then you never hear about them. So I want to make sure that you recognize that we still have all of those initiatives spinning. Now it's time to start bringing them together and connecting them. So I will definitely continue to discuss this data and where we're moving forward, but I just wanted to give you the rationale for why we're going that direction. So I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Not to be
Oh,
remiss.
sorry.
No, it's fine, but I don't want to lose sight of our teachers and staff.
Right. They need support.
Not to date anyone here, but if you go back to your beginning career, Mark, where you, no, but 1980, I'm speaking in general terms, but it applies to Fayette County. It does all over the nation. What we are asking, what our schools are doing nowadays, we're playing every role in a child's life. Our teachers are leaving, I'm speaking in general terms for the nation, teachers are leaving the profession in incredible numbers. And we can't lose sight of supporting our teachers, because they're important people in our community, and we've got a lot of great people. And our hope is that this is one step to give them, a teacher can be our toughest critic because they're living those trenches every day. And they, when you bring someone in, like Ken was talking about, with someone who can come in and say, I'm a teacher, I've been a teacher, I know what you're going through. That's powerful when they can help give them tools, help to diffuse a situation, because Teachers College doesn't prepare you for that.
No.
We teach content, but we teach kids first and most importantly. So I just don't want to lose sight of that. I know the board is very supportive of our staff, but our principals, our teachers, our support staff, it's hard, and we've got to find ways to continue to support them, because they are living this. And, are we perfect as a district? No. But there's a lot of teachers I go to war with any day of the week here who are giving everything they have, and principals and directors. So our bus drivers go through it too, and we've got to give them more supports. We've done some things, but it's a full service
Yeah, it is.
job for our kids. I don't want anyone in the public to lose sight of that. Is we provide health, mental health, food. We feed kids 3 times a day, a lot of kids. Clothing, medical care. We do it all, and we do it because we care about our kids and we don't want them to miss out on that. And that's my passion. I mean, you choose to work with kids and families because you love it. And that's why I think Kelly will be an awesome resource. She will be out there because she's worked with a lot of families and she has made that Little Spartan Preschool such an inviting place. So we want to replicate that for our middle school and high schoolers where your parent interaction drops off a lot. And you know that.
Oh, yeah.
When they get to high school because, they're adults and these kids aren't adults.
No.
Their brains aren't formed yet, especially boys, not to pick on the guys, but, so we gotta continue. So I appreciate what they're
And
doing.
I appreciate that comment, because I hope we do, through this process, support our teachers who are struggling as well.
Yeah, and that's the hard balance, because we have kids who have needs and families who have needs, and we have community resources who say, we can't take anymore. But on the other side, as a district, we have to provide as much support for our staff and our students. So it's a balancing game,
Yeah.
and the issue's just getting more and more
Well,
complex.
teachers have always been in loco parentis.
Sure.
But the parentis part over the last 20, 30 years has gotten to be so much more a big part of that. And as a classroom teacher, it was always a little depressing to have somebody come in from on high and dictate to us, well, you should be able to do this and you should be able to do this. And it's like, okay, that's fine. I have 30 kids in this class and I have 6 of them with special needs. And, and I'm in a confined space, and it's not an easy job, and it's very easy to sit up and kind of pontificate and say, well, you should be able to do this, this, and this. But it's so difficult. Teaching it's the best job it's the hardest job you'll ever love. And to see our kids struggle is very difficult for me personally, because I've been invested in this community and the kids for 37 years. So it's very difficult.
It is.
But we have to do something, or we're gonna lose kids, and we can't afford to do that.
Right.
I appreciate that, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Van, that was a good point. Now it's time for public comments. Persons wishing to make the board aware of suggestions, ideas, or comments may address the board at this time. Comments which involve personnel or students must be discussed in private. Seeing none, superintendent discussion group report. Principal director reports.
I just have a quick note for you guys to look over, but we talked to the school bus companies today, and the activity buses chassis are going to go up $10,000 in September. The big buses will go up between $15,000 and $20,000 in September. And if you order them now, you're 18 months away from getting them.
Ouch.
So I know we order our buses a little later normal, but maybe we want to move them ahead and try to save that $60,000, $70,000.
We may be bringing that to you in July
Okay,
or August
we can do that
instead of,
with her.
yeah, but we're still not gonna get them until 2024.
Yep, so.
So I wanted Daryl to share that with you because normally we do the buses in the winter.
Right.
But even the buses we ordered this year, the 22s, are not going to be in to start school.
We will get one next week, and it's the small one, but the other ones are not due until December.
So,
We're gonna have to be proactive, just wanted to put that in your
okay, all right.
Randy's working on budget stuff, but we'll have to budget that, but.
Any other principal directors?
I just want to thank Mr. Collins and Mrs. Casaro and Mr. Harris for being good sports. We ended our year of, I have pictures, if you ever want to see pictures.
No.
We ended our year with some great fun as a team. Kind of the gauntlet was kind of thrown down to make our admin team lunch, end of the year luncheon, something to remember. And Kelly and I are great co-planners, and but I wanted to thank you guys for just allowing us to be creative, and I wanted to welcome you guys to the admin team. You got your fan already. You're up here doing the cheerleading move. You got my heart already, so
That's all you have to do.
Thank you, Stephanie. Okay, Director of Operations report.
Transitioning on a little bit, a couple things. Yeah, Daryl just threw the bus numbers out at me this morning. I said, what? Just as a little heads up here, July, August, September, you're gonna start seeing budget information. We're still waiting on details from the state, so I really haven't been able to do any forward planning for 2023, but as soon as they release those numbers, I will be on top of that one. Transitioning then to the fund summary report. If you've got any questions, I'll be more than happy to answer them. We continue to be on a very positive trend. You're going to get inundated by a lot of numbers in the next month or two. Not only in the budget, but we're also going to be looking at general obligation bond. We're going to have some stuff from Baker Tilly. So this is just get your math muscles ready to go a little bit here. I know that's a struggle for a lot of people, and but we will get you there. And I would encourage you as we go through all of this stuff, the main thing is to make you, as 7 members of the board, comfortable. So there's no dumb questions. As we go through some of this, I deal with it daily, and it becomes almost mundane at times, but as we go through this, don't hesitate to say, hold it, that you put there, or the numbers brought by Baker Tilly, that's not making sense to me, or what's this ultimately going to mean to the taxpayer? So don't hesitate to ask questions as we go through the process. And the last thing I have is in front of you, you have just a plain white piece of paper that is probably going to get as much comment in some of the affluent school districts in the state as it does in the more lower socioeconomic districts in the state. That is, after July 1, I will be sending this letter out to all of our high school and middle school parents. Over the last 2 years with ESSER, we have been able to provide free meals for all of our students. They have not needed to apply. They have not needed to request. It has been provided. The USDA has eliminated those exceptions. So beginning with this coming school year, our elementary schools and preschool are still covered because of the socioeconomic level free and reduced rates of those buildings. Our elementary school students will still not have to pay for their meals. They will not have to apply for free or reduced lunches. But the parents at middle school, high school level will have to apply for free and reduced lunches unless they're covered by the SNAP, the TANF, some of the Medicaid, and those kind of things that are mentioned in the letters. But I'm sure we're going to get kickback on, hold it, I haven't paid for my kid's lunch meal in the last 2 years. And now you're telling me I have to pay again? Yes, that's what we're doing. Because that's where the federal government is on this. So this is just giving you a heads up of the letter that will be sent out. So if you get a phone call, if you get somebody meet you downtown or at the fair when we get to there and say, hey, what's the deal? What are you guys doing to us? Be thankful for the last 2 years, and we're back to the way it used to be 3 years ago.
Pre-pandemic.
So,
Pre-pandemic.
Yeah.
yep.
Thanks, Randy. Assistant Superintendent.
I don't have a lot, but I would like to welcome Mallory and Mike to our team, as well as Kirsten. I'm super excited about the admin team that we're building, and I just want to thank you guys for your support. It has been, we've brought a lot of initiatives to you, Scott and I have, over the last 5 years, and I just honestly believe that our staff and our administrators truly love kids, and we're doing some great things for kids, but it's all because of the support of you guys, and so I'm proud to be a Spartan today.
Thanks, Kim. Superintendent's report.
I would echo what Kim said with welcome aboard. Excited about Kelly's new role. And, as we look, I was reflecting back on the last 2 years. I wouldn't want to go back and relive it. March 13th, 2020 was a day that will live in infamy for educators in the world.
We thought the eclipse was going to be the worst.
Yeah, we thought that. That's minor, but, I just want to say thank you to all of our staff for navigating this. We kept our doors open more than most districts. We had a few bumps in the road, but that wouldn't have happened without the hardworking people we have and your support as we navigated through these challenging times. And unfortunately it became very political, but I appreciate our board, still focused on trying to keep the kids in school and in all of our efforts. So here's to a normal 2022, 23, but I don't know if it will be, but our new normal is what it is. And I just want to say thanks to everyone and to our parents for entrusting their kids with us.
Thank you. And on to For the Good of the Cause. Anybody have anything tonight?
I have been asked by Scott Caldwell, who is doing a fabulous job with Summer Discovery down at the park. The FFA from Connersville High School is off to their state convention, and they're going to come home with lots of hardware. We don't know exactly how much now. His daughter, and I can't think of her name, I'm just
Victoria?
Victoria. Yes, is up for a state office. And it's pretty much a shoe-in because she has done everything she needs to do and is apparently very, very good. But he wanted me to just kind of tout what the FFA is doing and the whole ag thing, and having an agricultural component now is part of something at the middle school they think will really, really get more kids interested in the agribusiness or that kind of thing. And that whole atmosphere that's created by the FFA, Gabe and the group and Eilish at the high school is just such a positive influence on so many kids. So we're going to try to attract more. But it's kind of nice to go to the state convention and get the hardware. So congratulations to them and thanks to the FFA and all that they do.
Anybody else?
On Friday, we used the field house for about 200 kids, 7th, 8th, and 9th graders to play basketball. 4 different school corporations. I was there all day because Carrie had personal circumstances. But probably had 200 or 300 parents as well. And things went great, and just proud of the facility and seeing it in action. So it was just fun.
Good.
There was a mess of softball girls in there tonight. A bunch of them. I don't know how many fix markers there.
I just want to give a shout out for how good our SROs here are in the school system. With what I saw a couple weeks ago in Uvalde, Texas, and the cowardice of law enforcement, that's just plain what it was, just cowardice. And Leslie, you could stop on that. When you sit there and you watch a group of police officers, you wonder how much effect what's called the freeze factor is, and they never, I wish there was a way of testing for that. But as an example, one of the first I had a family fight, I had a rookie with me who was about the size of Dennis, a very violent family fight. I go running in there and I look behind me and he's still sitting in the car. He was frozen. He panicked, and there's no way to actually
Know that.
to know that prior to going into a situation like that. But having said that was just plain cowardice. But having said that, knowing our SROs here, I'd like to tell the parents of Fayette County, I have no doubt there would be no hesitation for any of our SORs to rush into a school right at the fire factor. There would be no hesitation. And having said that, I want to ask every law enforcement officer in this county in particular to take a look at yourself. And if you cannot say to yourself without any degree of hesitation, 100%, that I'm going to go toward that firefighter, or I'm going to go toward the perpetrator with guns blazing, then they need to find another occupation, because we're not going to tolerate cowardice that I saw in Texas. It's just, I was embarrassed to be a police officer. I can't speak for Dennis, but that's all it was. But our SROs are excellent, and I just wish we had more of them. But I just want to give a kudos to them. They're good officers. So.
Great partnership with them.
Thank you, Chris. I really enjoyed hearing that from you. Anything else tonight? Well then, sir. I'm waiting.
We're waiting, Chris.
I make that motion to adjourn.
Got a second. All right. All those in favor, signify by raising your hand. Opposed, same sign.